Since the beginning of our 2012 fiscal year, we've investigated approximately 9 workplace fatalities in the oil and gas industry, as well as 1 catastrophe where 3 employees were hospitalized. This is quite an increase from the previous few years. As a result of that, we've conducted approximately 75 enforcement inspections throughout the state recently. We're done with that phase of the operation, and now we would like to do a cooperative initiative. What I'm asking each of you to do is to participate in a stand down cooperatively. We're providing you some training materials through this PowerPoint. Your industry associations have materials that you can use to do stand downs. And we're asking you to go out to each of your job sites, do rig inspections, and do employee training using these training tools. On October 13th in Jackson County, my office responded to the first drilling rig fatality of the year. A derrick man was working up in the derrick on this drilling rig and was struck in the head by a stand of pipe. The crew was tripping in whenever the accident occurred. The man lost control of a stand of pipe when he was trying to move it into the elevators, and instead of using a rope, he was cradling it in his shoulder and he threw it into the rig, and it hit the traveling block and the derrick, bounced back, and both hit him in the head, causing the fatal injuries. Key to note there is there were 3 stands of pipe, 31 feet each in length. They weighed about 14 pounds per foot for a total weight of 1,300 pounds that one derrick man was trying to handle by himself. So the use of a rope or some type of method to help him control that pipe so he doesn't lose control was essential in the investigation and how to prevent this type of accident. Then on November 7th, we responded to our second fatality of the year. This was in Osage County, where a drilling crew was tripping out of the hole when the traveling block fell to the rig floor, crushing one of the workers. They were lifting the pipe out of the hole when a retaining device that holds the wire rope to the load drum failed and allowed the traveling block to fall. We found later that the retaining device was a wire rope clip type retainer. It secured the wire rope to the drum. It was not the correct size and was not installed properly. Our third fatality of the year happened on November the 11th. This happened at a oil servicing company at their yard in Dewey County. 2 employees were operating a forklift each, so they were using 2 forklifts in tandem to try to carry a sand bin that you see in the slide here. As they passed by an adjacent sand bin, it tipped over, struck the load that they were both carrying, and turned over both forklifts. One of the employees fell from the seat and was crushed by the forklift. Key findings in this investigation: using forklifts in tandem like this is difficult to handle the load and not recommended by the manufacturer. Also, the victim that was crushed by the forklift was not wearing a seat belt and did not stay in the protective structure of the forklift. Then on December 14th, we investigated our 4th fatality of the year. This happened at a oil and gas site in Woods County, and he was delivering a load of polycoil pipe that you see in the slide. Made his delivery, attempting to unload his coil of pipe, unstrapped his transportation strap, and the coil tipped and fell onto him. The coil of pipe, about 500 feet of length of poly pipe, weighed approximately 1,700 pounds, crushing the employee. Key recommendation here to prevent this is to make sure that employees are clear of the danger zone before removing the transportation straps. 5th case of the year was not a fatality but a catastrophe. Happened on January the 20th. This was a rig fire where 4 employees were burned. 3 of them were hospitalized. We investigate these just like we do any fatality. You can see this is an actual picture of the rig. They were drilling for crude oil and the well kicked. The employees on the rig floor heard a diesel engine dieseling, decided to evacuate, and then they decided they needed to go back up to turn the engines off and to try to close the well in. 2 employees went underneath the rig floor where the blowout preventers actuators were, trying to close the well in, while the other 2 employees went back up on the rig floor trying to turn off the dieseling engines. The escaping gas and crude oil found an ignition source, and the fire ignited, and we had an explosion and fire which burned for 2 days over the weekend. Due to the employees wearing their fire-resistant clothing, the employees survived, and their burns were isolated to their hands, face, and neck for the most part. One employee had some burning down inside underneath his FRC, but it probably saved their lives by wearing their FRC. Our 6th fatality of the year that we investigated occurred at a drilling company's yard. They were bringing an A-leg, which is part of their drilling rig, back to the yard. Had it strapped on a flatbed, similar to what you see in the picture. They pulled forward into the yard, unstrapped it, and they were trying to hook up the lift hook to lift it off of the trailer. The A-leg actually rolled off of the trailer with an employee standing on top of it. He fell with the A-leg component and was crushed underneath it. Some of the key factors here that we found on this investigation is there were 2 companies working side by side there. We had a transportation company as well as the drilling rig company. So we had employees of each company there. Communication is critical when you've got employees from different companies. The transportation company had already removed the straps from the drilling rig, and the other employees didn't know that. And so they got up on top of the component before it was hooked up to the crane to lift it off the truck, leaving it unsecured and allowing it to roll off the trailer. We investigated our 7th fatality of the year, and this was a electrical contractor who does oil field electrical work for the different companies providing electrical service to oil leases out in the field. An employee went up to do some work on a 7.2 kV power line, thought it was de-energized, disconnected the line, lowered it down with his bucket truck, and the groundman grabbed the line, which was energized, and was electrocuted. The employee was wearing work gloves, but not insulated gloves. Key recommendation is always test to verify de-energization of the electrical equipment that you're handling, electrical lines and equipment. Our 8th fatality of the year occurred on April 18th, also in Woods County, and this was on a hydraulic fracturing job. It was a water contractor who was supplying water to the hydraulic fracturing part of the project. They did not have water from the water pit, which was located about a mile away from the well that they were fracturing. He drove back to there alone, and the way you prime the pump is to open up the bypass valve, which is a 4-inch flexible line. He apparently opened it all the way. The employee was found in the water pit with 2 injuries to his head, and the valve to that flexible hose was fully open with the 4-inch line whipping around. Recommendations here is make sure all your fracking lines are secured to prevent them from whipping, restrained in some way. Also, if at all possible, work in tandem instead of by themselves at remote locations. On April 21st, we investigated our 9th fatality of the year, and this is where a derrick man fell from the derrick board approximately 50 feet. He had gone up the ladder to the derrick board using a climb restraint, which secured him to the ladder in case he fell. He unhooked when he got to the derrick board and did not hook up his restraining fall protection on the derrick board. Grabbed his first stand of pipe, walked to the end, and fell. The recommendation here is to practice 100% fall protection. Always be tied off some way before you disconnect your ladder climbing device, hook up to the derrick board restraint, or have some type of retractable lifeline where you're always hooked up in the derrick. Rig supervisor, the driller, needs to make sure that his derrick man is tied off and has his fall protection on prior to sending up the blocks and starting your tripping operation. And our last fatality that we've investigated was on April 24th. These last 3 were within 1 week of each other. This one happened here in Oklahoma County. They were doing rig setup There's a platform that the air hoist is attached to called a frog, and it's a cantilevered or swinging type of platform. They were lifting it with a forklift and the tines with a chain suspended underneath it, lifting it up. An employee proceeded underneath that swinging platform and attempted to install a pin, and the chain sling came loose, allowing the platform to swing back down, crushing the employee. One of the recommendations is to never have an employee underneath a suspended load such as that. Also ensure that the manufacturer of your equipment that's being used intends the equipment to be used that way. And also make sure that the chain slings are used properly. So to sum up, the type of events that have occurred, the 10, if you break them down, we've had 7 that were due to being struck by or crushed by equipment. 1 was a fall from elevation. We had 1 fire explosion that we've investigated, and 1 was an electrocution. The type of operations where the fatalities are occurring in the field, 4 dealt with tripping, either tripping in or tripping out of the well. 2 dealt with transportation or delivery of equipment or materials. 1 was a result of a material handling forklift. 1 was at a fracturing water service operation. 1 was during rig up, and 1 was an electrical service doing work for the oil field industry. 6 of the fatalities, catastrophes that we investigated dealt with drilling operations. 4 were oil field services. If you break down the size of companies that experienced the fatalities this year, this slide shows you the range of the size of companies, 15 being the smallest employer, 280 being the largest. The average size of the employer was 103, and the median size being 50. Smallest employers with less than 20 employees had 1 fatality. Middle-sized employers of 20 to 99 had 6, and then the larger employers of over 100 employees had 3 of the fatalities. The age of the victims of the 10 that we investigated ranged from 21 to 50, the average age being 35, median age being 34. Length of service with the companies, 6 of the workers that died in the oil field this year had less than a year with the company they worked for. 3 of them had 1 to 5 years with the company, and 1 had worked for their company greater than 5 years. OSHA cannot reduce fatalities and injuries alone through its enforcement activities. So I'm asking each of you to cooperatively participate in this stand down. If you're a production company or a company that has subcontractors, I would ask you to participate in this cooperative initiative. Allow your subcontractors to participate, or even require them to participate in this shutdown or the stand down. Take the information that's given and try to make a difference out there. Attached with this video or on the University of Texas Arlington website, you can obtain the registration form. You can obtain the report out form, where you can report how many employees were trained, how many hazards you identified, how many work sites you inspected. So please cooperatively go out and participate in this stand down. And I thank you in advance for participating, and if you need any assistance, please contact our office. Thank you very much.